As consumer demand for animal-derived protein continues to grow, so do concerns among some consumer segments about the overall sustainability of livestock production. Increasingly, the animal health industry is researching the development of products and services that enable livestock producers to deliver products that fit consumer preferences for environmentally sustainable protein options. Welcome to Feedstuffs in Focus, our podcast taking a deeper look at big issues in the livestock, poultry, grain, and feed industries. I'm your host, Andy Vance. Thanks for joining us. This episode is sponsored by United Animal Health, a leader in animal health and nutrition. You can learn more about United Animal Health and how they're working to advance animal science worldwide by visiting the website unitedanh.com. In this episode, we talk with Jenna Lansing, director of the Agri-Food WatchDesk at Aimpoint Research, a global strategic intelligence firm specializing in the agriculture and food sectors. The firm blends military intelligence techniques with market research capabilities to help organizations in the industry understand what's really happening in the marketplace, what's going to happen in the future, and what to do to ensure success no matter what the future may bring. Lansing manages a team of analysts who monitor hundreds of intelligence sources daily to understand what's happening across the value chain, helping clients see potential impacts and disruptions they might not have otherwise seen. Jenna, it's no secret that the modern consumer is interested in a lot of different things about where food comes from and how it's produced. A lot of different tentacles, I guess, that they kind of have wrapped around that whole topic of consumer preferences. You and your colleagues at Aimpoint Research track this and study this and understand that you've been looking more and more into tracking consumer preferences as it relates to the animal health market and environmental sustainability of livestock production, beef and dairy, perhaps in particular. Maybe let's step back and before we dive into the nitty gritty of your latest reporting, maybe span the waterfront for us as to why this has become an area of interest that you and your colleagues at Aimpoint are tracking and studying.
So, if we think about why we're tracking this, sustainability has been a very hot topic for many years around the world, especially as like the Paris Climate Accord got signed around 2015. And there's just this whole focus on improving sustainability all throughout the world. So, we've really taken it here at Aimpoint to track that and understand what's really motivating the consumers. Some of our market research work we've done, we've actually seen that consumers, especially the Gen Z and the millennial age groups, are more likely to be purchasing food specifically on what companies are doing from a sustainability standpoint. So that naturally affects a lot of our clients, given we specialize in ag and food.
When you talk about those two demos, I think for a lot of time in recent memory, we've been cussing and discussing the millennials, but certainly Gen Z has become more and more of a focal point. And my observations that the millennials and Gen Z have some very different feelings about things just in general, very different purchasing behaviors, maybe some similarities, but are those two segments significant enough and are they different enough from, let's say, Gen X and older that it's moving the needle, or are there general trends across all consumers that we might want to draw from as well?
I think the general trend that consumers are more focused and want to connect on shared values, that's applicable across all the generations. But if we think about looking 10, 20 years out, who are going to be the main buyers? It's your Gen Z and your millennials. And you're already starting to see that with the millennials being, they're the ones having families right now and are a large consumer in the marketplace. And as the Gen Z continues to grow older, their presence and influence is going to become a lot stronger.
How are those preferences showing up currently? Because one of the things I think about, and we've been talking about this as an industry for 20 years now, when maybe 20 years ago we were talking about some of the things that the animal rights movement was putting out there in front of consumers about how animals were treated and their well-being and so on. But the question was always, in my mind at least, how does it show up in purchasing data? It's one thing if I tell a survey taker, gosh, this is important to me, but it's quite another if I don't vote that way with my pocketbook. Are we seeing trends there, or how are these preferences showing up in the marketplace?
Yeah, so if we think about if from our own personal experiences, if you're the one walking into the grocery store, there are so many more label claims now, the non-hormone treated or never treated with hormones or with hormones, never treated with antibiotics, non-GMOs, sustainable, healthy labels. You're seeing a lot more labels emerge on food products. That's how it's showing up, and we're really, or companies are able to track that.
And as consumer demand for protein grows overall, I think that's a trend that's been a positive for agriculture, not just domestically, but globally. You're certainly seeing the appetite for global protein continue to grow, and that's been a boon for livestock producers and processors in the feed industry and so on. But now we're seeing some interesting things that have shown up, and I want to dial in on some recent research you've done that companies in the pharmaceutical animal health space are starting to think about how can they maybe help the industry, I guess, if that's the way to look at this. Certainly, how can they make some money doing it, but how can they help the industry meet some of these consumer questions, concerns, preferences? What are we seeing in terms of innovation in that space, and do you think that this will be a significant part of the portfolio moving forward?
Yeah, so out of the innovation we're seeing, there's a variety of different technologies, products, and services that are starting to emerge and be developed. And I think it's important to note there is such a variety in this space because it's not a one size fits all approach. What works on a farm or a ranch out in Montana is not going to work on necessarily on a dairy in California. So that helps explain and helps us understand why there are such a variety of products that and services coming out that will help us mitigate or reduce methane and greenhouse gas emissions from livestock. But to talk through or give a couple examples of those innovations, so there's a ton of feed additives coming out that are being explored. One notable advancement has been the FDA approved a Lanco's Experior 50, which is actually the first product approved in the US that has gas reducing claims for animals. So that's interesting. There's also a lot of research being done and products emerging about feeding small portions of seaweed to ruminant animals to help reduce methane. Another couple innovations that are happening, the genetic selection. New Zealand has really put an emphasis in their breeding programs to select cows that produce less methane. Another couple things that are emerging in New Zealand too, given their dairy industry, they're developing vaccines actually that they can give to ruminant animals that target the bugs in the digestive system that actually produce the methane. So that's also an interesting technology that will likely be coming out here in the next few years. And then if we move out of the more product and actual animal health space and we think more about the tools themselves, Zelp, a European-based startup, actually just released a mask that reduces methane that cows can wear. They're partnering with Cargill to test these devices in Europe. And then also DSM and Block Consultants partnered to launch Sustel. Sustel is a digital sustainability service that assesses the baseline environmental footprint of animal protein production by leveraging actual farm and feed data opposed to using averages or just general data sets to determine that. So it's a more personalized solution to really figure out sustainability scores on farm. So a ton of different innovations emerging. I think there's a lot of advancements that still need to happen in this space, but it's definitely coming in at the forefront of technology and innovation for the livestock industry.
I want to pick apart one, I think, key concern I would have if I'm a producer, a livestock producer listening to this conversation. So let's say I have this baseline understanding that consumers are concerned about the environment, and that can manifest itself in different ways, whether they're concerned about water quality, air quality, climate change, a whole host of things that are kind of in this broad basket of environmental sustainability concerns. The question I think I would have if I was a producer is, who's going to pay for this? And so the logical extension from that is, with the different products, services, technologies that you've discussed there, are any of those looking at ways to benefit the producer? In other words, are there efficiency gains? Are there productivity gains that are coming along with any of these? Because maybe that's what helps the producer buy into some of those new technologies, that, hey, there's something in it for me too, aside from the warm fuzzy feeling of doing right by the environment, which is important, but maybe doesn't help feed your kids.
Yeah, that's a great point and a genuine concern many producers have. And I think Elanco's Experior 50, that feed additive, is a prime example of this. So, like I said, that was the first product that the FDA approved with gas reducing claims. So what that means is other companies have actually tried getting products registered that can reduce gas emissions from ruminant animals, but they haven't been successful at getting the FDA approval. So they'll have to prove another benefit of the product, whether it be milk efficiency, for example, or increased milk production. I mean, that's how they had gotten products labeled in the past that have secondary claims that they can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So definitely looking at that, there's production gains that they can get from leveraging some of these technologies.
Yeah, that to me, and maybe you can speak to a little bit about if this has shown up in any of your research, as you're tracking all this. I mean, to me, that the hiccup is going to be, I have no doubt that the scientists and the researchers and developers can come up with a host of things that can really help us move the needle on this issue, whether we're talking about ammonia reduction or methane capture. But it kind of takes me back to, hey, we have these methane digesters now, but there's a very real kind of hard limit, if you will, on how small an operation can be before it's economically feasible to look at having a methane digester on your dairy, as an example. So, getting to a point where that we can get adoption across enough of a slice of the industry to move the needle, seems to me like a real concern. Are you seeing that show up in your research at all, that hey, maybe here are some opportunities to get that to a wider scope of the industry, or is it just too early in the process, too early in the development of these kind of products to where we're worrying about that piece of the puzzle yet?
I think it's too early in the development, like you said. However, I think we can look to other industries that are maybe more advanced in this space as to how this can play out. I think carbon's a prime example of that the row crop industry is looking at.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one where, maybe is the solution that simple? Not that it's really that simple, but that someone else is going to pay for it, and the farmer is going to be the person who actually does it. In other words, we're going to rely on, let's say, the electricity utilities needing to buy carbon credits, and we've seen some discussion about that through USDA and what different USDA programs might be able to facilitate this. But I don't know that we've seen like really great success stories of cap and trade or carbon credit markets working on a mass scale yet, have we?
There has been some instances around the world where they have been successful. If we look here domestically in the United States, in order for the farmers to capitalize on the carbon, there likely has to be some regulation put into place or some actual caps.
Mhm.
As of right now, that has not been explored or really talked about out of Washington. So we'll just have to watch and see how that unfolds.
I want to finish up with this. So if you're someone who's listening to us have this conversation, and I want to ask you, Jenna, to put your crystal ball out on the table. What are things that you're tracking as you and your colleagues at the Watch Desk at Aimpoint follow this particular story, if you will, or interconnected set of stories? What are things that you're really excited about that you see on the horizon, that, hey, this isn't here yet, but it's coming, and you as a producer or a feed manufacturer or veterinarian listening to this, this is something you should be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if I think looking out, what excites me the most is the fact that the technology is emerging. And that really gives the United States animal protein industry an opportunity to really leverage our leadership in the space. If you think about, we could work collaboratively as an industry to achieve the goals and set out and meet consumer preferences. And we can set the standards on the global market of what that should look like for sustainable animal protein production.
Thanks to Jenna Lansing of Aimpoint Research for her insights into consumer preferences related to environmental sustainability and what the industry is doing from an R&D standpoint to meet those challenges and concerns head on. For the latest economic news facing the food, animal, and animal feed production industries and how the trends in research, development, and technologies affect your business, subscribe to the Feedstuffs Daily e-newsletter. This episode was sponsored by United Animal Health, a leader in animal health and nutrition. You can learn more about United Animal Health and how they're working to advance animal science worldwide by visiting the website unitedanh.com. I'm Andy Vance, and you've been listening to Feedstuffs in Focus. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to hear more conversations about some of the big issues affecting the livestock, poultry, grain, and feed industries, subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platforms, including Apple and Google Podcasts. Or you can just check our website, feedstuffs.com, for future episodes. Until next time, have a great day, and thanks for listening.